You have to run a lot of simulations to understand what's going to happen, because you can't really test the rocket until it goes to space, and you want it to work. So you have to simulate subsonic, transonic, supersonic, hypersonic ascent, and then coming back, super high heating and orbital dynamics. All this is going to be simulated. So because you don't get very many kicks at the can. But we run the simulations to see what happens. Not if we knew what happens, we wouldn't run the simulation. Mm-hmm. So if there's whoever created this existence, they're running it because they don't know what's going to happen, not because they do.
So maybe we both played Diablo. Maybe Diablo was created to see if a druid, your character, could defeat Uber Lilith at the end. They didn't know.
Well, the funny thing is that Uber Lilith, her title is Hatred Incarnate.
Yeah.
And right now, I guess you can ask the Diablo team, but it's almost impossible to defeat Hatred in the Eternal Realm.
Yeah, you've streamed yourself dominating Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons. And still...
I can cruise through Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons like a stroll in the park.
Mm-hmm. And still you're defeated by Hatred.
Yeah, I can... There's the sort of, I guess maybe the second hardest boss is Duriel. Duriel can't even scratch the paint. Mm-hmm. So I killed Duriel so many times. And every other boss in the game, all of them, kill him so many times, it's easy. But Uber Lilith, otherwise known as Hatred Incarnate, especially if you're a druid and you have no ability to go and to be invulnerable, there are these random death waves that come at you. And I'm pretty, admittedly I'm 52, so my reflexes are not what they used to be, but I have a lifetime of playing video games. At one point I was, maybe one of the best Quake players in the world. I actually won money in what I think was the first paid esports tournament in the US. We're doing 4-person Quake tournaments, and we came second. I was the second best person on the team, and the actual best person that we were actually winning. We would have come first, except the best person on the team, his computer crashed halfway through the game, so we came second. But I got money for it and everything. So basically, I got skills. Mm-hmm. Albeit no spring chicken these days, and. To be totally frank, it's driving me crazy trying to beat Lilith as a druid. Basically, trying to beat Hatred Incarnate in the Eternal Realm
as a druid.
As a druid, and if you, this is really vexing. Let me tell you.
I mean, the challenge is part of the fun. I have seen directly, you're actually a world-class, incredible video game player.
Yeah,
and I think Diablo. So you're just picking up a new game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're figuring out its fundamentals. You're also, with the Paragon board and the build, are not somebody like me who perfectly follows whatever they suggest on the internet. You're also an innovator there.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious to watch. It's like a mad scientist just trying to figure out the Paragon board and the build. And is there some interesting insights there about if somebody's starting as a druid? Do you have advice?
I would not recommend playing a druid in the Eternal Realm. Right now, I think the most powerful character in the seasonal realm is the sorcerer with the lightning bolts. Mm-hmm. So the sorcs have huge balls in the seasonal.
Well, yeah, that's what they say.
so sorcs have huge balls. They do huge balls of lightning.
I'll take your word for it.
And it's actually in the seasonal realm. You can. It's pretty easy to beat Uber Lilith with because you get these vampiric powers that amplify your damage and increase your defense and whatnot. So, but really quite easy to defeat Hatred seasonally, mm-hmm. But to defeat Hatred eternally, very difficult. Almost impossible. It's verging on impossible. It seems like this a metaphor for life. Yeah.
I like the idea that Elon Musk, because I was playing Diablo yesterday and I saw 100 level 100 druid just run by, I will never die, and then run back the other way.
Yeah.
And there's just this metaphor. It's kind of hilarious that Elon Musk, is fighting hatred, restlessly fighting hatred in this demonic realm.
Yes.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's pretty hilarious.
No, it's absurd. Really, it's exercise in absurdity, and it makes me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah. I mean, what do you get from video games in general? Is there for you personally?
I mean, it's I don't know if it calms my mind. I mean, you sort of killing the demons in a video game calms the demons in my mind. Yeah. If you play a tough video game, you can get into like a state of flow, which is very enjoyable. But admittedly, it needs to be not too easy, not too hard, kind of in the Goldilocks zone. And I guess you generally want to feel like you're progressing in the game. So, a good video, and there's also beautiful art, engaging storylines, and it's like an amazing puzzle to solve, I think. And so it's like solving the puzzle.
Elden Ring, the greatest game of all time. I still haven't played it, but to you,
Elden Ring is definitely a candidate for best game ever. Top 5 for sure.
I think I've been scared how hard it is, or how hard I hear it is. So, but it is beautiful.
Elden Ring feels like it's designed by an alien.
There's a theme to this discussion. In what way?
It's so unusual. It's incredibly creative, and the art is stunning. I recommend playing it on a big resolution, high dynamic range TV. Even doesn't need to be a monitor. Just the art is incredible. It's so beautiful, and it's so unusual. And each of those top boss battles is unique. Like it's like a unique puzzle to solve. Each one's different. And the strategy you use to solve one battle is different from another battle.
That said, you said Druid on Eternal against Uber Lilith is the hardest boss battle you've ever.
Correct. That is currently and I've played a lot of video games because it's my primary recreational activity.
Yes.
And yes, beating hatred in the eternal realm is the hardest boss battle in life and in the video game.
Metaphor and
I'm not sure it's possible, but it's. I do make progress, so then I'm like, okay, I'm making progress. Maybe if I just tweak that Paragon board a little more, I can do it. I can just dodge a few more waves. I can do it.
Well, the simulation is created for the purpose of figuring out if it can be done, and you're just a cog in that simulation, in the machine of the simulation.
Yeah, it might be. I have a feeling that at least I think
it's doable.
It's doable, yes.
Well, that's the human spirit right there, to believe.
Yeah. I mean, it did prompt me to think about just hate in general, which is, you want to be careful of one of those things where you wish for something that sounds good, but if you get it, it's actually a dystopian situation. So, you could sort of run a hypothesis of like, if you wish for world peace, sounds good, but how is it enforced? And at what cost is it? At what cost eternal peace? It might actually be worse to have eternal peace because of what that would entail. The suppression of everyone. It might be the suppression of progress. It might be an ossified society that never changes. What I'm saying is that there is an argument that if you wish for no war, you should be careful what you wish for, because what's required in order for there to be no war might be worse than a little war.
Yeah, the things we consider to be flaws of human civilization might be a necessary components for whatever optimal looks like. Do you worry about AI, AGI enabling a dystopian state of this nature? Whether it's 1984 with surveillance and fear, or Brave New World with pleasure, and what is it? Lots of sex, but no deep human experience.
There's actually a real drug called Soma.
There is.
Yes.
Let me take notes.
Did they actually?
Does Grok know about it? No, he probably will go to Brave New World.
We could ask it.
What would be the question?
Tell us about the drug called Soma.
Tell us about the drug called Soma. It's going to go to Brave New World, I think.
Well, there's a real drug as well.
Searching for Soma drug information. Oh, boy. Soma, the wonder drug. By the way, I'm in fun mode.
Oh, okay, fun. Yeah, so it's talking about the real drug.
Oh, it's a muscle relaxant that's been around since the 1950s. It's used to treat muscle pain and discomfort, and it does this by altering the activity between neurons and the spinal cord. Now, Soma isn't just a pain reliever. It's also a bit of a sedative. It can make you feel a bit drowsy, so it's not something to take if you're planning on operating heavy machinery or trying to solve complex math equations. And it goes on and on. In conclusion, Soma is a drug that can be helpful for those dealing with muscle pain, but it's not without its risks. It's pretty good. Oh, wait a minute.
That's the real drug it's talking about.
It's the real drug.
Yeah.
And of course, the fun is always use it responsibly in accordance with the advice of a healthcare professional. And remember, in the end, the universe is probably just a giant computer simulation, so don't take anything too seriously. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So,
and also really nicely includes like the tweets, posts on X that are relevant to this, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It like integrates everything together.
Yeah.
Like the interface is one of the really cool things here.
Yeah, team's done a great job. So, and you could say no, I mean Soma from Brave New World, because it thinks you mean Soma the real drug.
Yeah.
No, I mean Soma from Brave New World.
It's gonna be like, oops, I'm really sorry. I'm really surprised it went to the real drug first. My apologies. I was thinking of the muscle relaxant. Soma for Brave New World is a different beast altogether. No, this Huxley's dystopian. Now, Soma is a drug that plays a central role in the society depicted in the book. It's a mood-altering, hallucinogenic drug that's used to keep the population docile and content. In the novel, to use Soma in Brave New World raises some interesting questions about the nature of happiness and the role of drugs in society. Oh, man.
Exactly. Is it better to live in a world where everyone is happy all the time, even if that happiness is artificial?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. This is what I mean. Like, do you wish for world peace and happiness all the time? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Because that might be a society that is essentially sterile and ossified, that never changes, that is ultimately doomed.
This kind of tension between darkness and the light.
This is really a very good summary.
Mm-hmm.
It really gets to the point. This is not simply regurgitating Brave New World. It's actually getting to the salient element of Soma as a drug. Do you actually want to be in a situation where everyone is happy all the time, even though it's artificial? Or is it better to confront the challenges of life and experience the full range of human emotions, even if it means experiencing pain and suffering?
For those listening, by the way, Elon just read directly from Grok, which is a really nice kind of insightful philosophical analysis of the tension here. Interesting.
It pretty much nails it. In conclusion, Soma from Brave New World is a fictional drug that is used to explore some deep philosophical questions about the nature of happiness and the role of drugs in society. It's a powerful symbol of the dangers of using drugs to escape from reality and the importance of confronting the challenges of life head on. Nailed it. And the crazy thing is, we do have a real drug called Soma, which kind of is kind of like the drug in the book. And I'm like, they must have named it after?
Yeah,
something.
probably.
Yeah. Soma, the real drug, is quite effective on back pain.
So you know about this drug?
I've taken it.
It's fascinating. Okay.
Because I had a squashed disc in my C5, C6.
So it takes the physical pain away, But soma here is...
It doesn't completely. It reduces the amount of pain you feel, but at the expense of mental acuity. It dulls your mind. just like the drug in the book.
Just like the drug in the book.
Yeah.
And hence the trade-off. The thing that seems like utopia could be a dystopia after all.
Yeah. And actually, I was talking to a friend of mine saying, like, would you really want there to be no hate in the world? Like, really none? Like, I wonder why hate evolved. I'm not saying we should amplify hate, of course. I think we should try to minimize it. But none at all? There might be a reason for hate.
And suffering. I mean, it's really complicated to consider that some amount of human suffering is necessary for human flourishing.
Is it possible to appreciate the highs without knowing the lows?
And that all is summarized there in a single statement from Grok. Okay.
No highs, no lows. Who knows?
That's almost a poem. It seems that training LLMs efficiently is a big focus for XAI. What's the first of all, what's the limit of what's possible in terms of efficiency? There's this terminology of useful productivity per watt. Like, what have you learned from pushing the limits of that?
Well, I think it's helpful. The tools of physics are very powerful and can be applied, I think, to almost any arena in life. It's really just critical thinking. For something important, you need to reason from first principles and think about things in the limit, one direction or the other. So, in the limit, even at the Kardashev scale, meaning even if you harness the entire power of the sun, you will still care about useful compute per watt. So that's where I think probably where things are headed from the standpoint of AI is that we have a silicon shortage now that will transition to a voltage transformer shortage in about a year. Ironically, transformers for transformers. You need transformers to run transformers.
Somebody has a sense of humor in this thing.
I think, yes.
Oh, man.
Fate loves irony. Ironic humor. And an ironically funny outcome seems to be often what fate wants.
Humor is all you need. I think spice is all you need, somebody posted.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have a silicon shortage today. A voltage step down transformer shortage probably in about a year, and then just electricity shortages in general in about 2 years. I gave a speech for the sort of world gathering of utility companies, electricity companies. And I said, look, you really need to prepare for a tripling of electricity demand. Because all transport is going to go electric, with the ironic exception of rockets, and heating will also go electric. So energy usage right now is roughly 1/3, if very rough terms, 1/3 electricity, 1/3 transport, 1/3 heating. And so in order for everything to go sustainable, to go electric, you need to triple electricity output. So I encourage the utilities to build more power plants and also to probably have, well, not probably, they should definitely buy more batteries, because the grid currently is sized for real-time load, which is kind of crazy because, that means you got to size for whatever the peak electricity demand is, like the worst second or the worst day of the year, or you can have a brownout or a blackout. And we had that crazy blackout for several days in Austin. So because there's almost no buffering of energy in the grid. Like if you've got a hydro power plant, you can buffer energy, but otherwise it's all real time. So with batteries, you can produce energy at night and use it during the day. So you can buffer. So I expect that there will be very heavy usage of batteries in the future, because the peak to trough ratio for power plants is anywhere from 2 to 5. So it's like lowest point to highest point.
So like batteries are necessary to balance it out, but the demand, as you're saying, is going to grow.
Yeah,
and part of that is the compute.
Yes. Yes. I mean, electrification of transport and electric heating will be much bigger than AI, at least
in the short term.
But even for AI, you really have a growing demand for electricity for electric vehicles, and a growing demand for electricity to run the computers for AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is obviously going to lead to an electricity shortage.
How difficult is the problem of, in this particular case, maximizing the useful productivity per watt for training neural nets? Like, this seems to be really where the big problem we're facing that needs to be solved is how to use the power efficiently. Like, what you've learned so far about applying this physics, first principle reasoning in this domain, how difficult is this problem?
It will get solved. It's just a question of how long it takes to solve it. So at various points, there's a limit, some kind of limiting factor to progress. And with regard to AI, I'm saying like right now the limiting factor is silicon chips, and that we're gonna then have more chips than we can actually plug in and turn on, probably in about a year. The initial constraint being literally voltage step down transformers, because you've got power coming in at 300,000 volts, and it's got to step all the way down eventually to around 0.7 volts. So it's a very big amount of, the voltage step down is gigantic. So the industry is not used to rapid growth.
Okay, let's talk about the competition here. You've shown concern about Google and Microsoft with OpenAI developing AGI. How can you help ensure with xAI and Tesla AI work that it doesn't become a competitive race to AGI, but instead is a collaborative development of safe AGI?
Well, I mean, I've been pushing for some kind of regulatory oversight for a long time. I've been somewhat of a Cassandra on the subject for over a decade. I think we want to be very careful in how we develop AI. It's a great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. I think it would be wise for us to have at least an objective third party who can be like a referee that can go in and understand what the various leading players are doing with AI. And even if there's no enforcement ability, they can at least voice concerns publicly. Jeff Hinton, for example, left Google and he voiced strong concerns, but now he's not at Google anymore. So who's going to voice the concerns? So I think there's, Tesla gets a lot of regulatory oversight on the automotive front. I mean, we're subject to, I think, over 100 regulatory agencies domestically and internationally. It's a lot. You could fill this room with all the regulations that Tesla has to adhere to for automotive. Same is true in for rockets and for currently the limiting factor for SpaceX for Starship launch is regulatory approval. The FAA has actually given their approval, but we're waiting for Fish and Wildlife to finish their analysis and give their approval. That's why I posted, I want to buy a fish license on, which also refers to the Monty Python sketch.
Yeah.
Like, why do you need a license for your fish? I don't know. But according to the rules, I'm told you need some sort of fish license or something. We effectively need a fish license to launch a rocket. And I'm like, wait a second. How did the fish come into the picture?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things like that I feel like are so absurd that I want to do like a comedy sketch and flash at the bottom, this is all real. This is actually what happened. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was a bit of a challenge at one point is that they were worried about a rocket hitting a shark. Mm-hmm. And the ocean is very big. And how often do you see sharks? Not that often. As a percentage of ocean surface area, sharks basically are zero. And so then we said, well, how will we calculate the probability of telling a shark? And then they're like, well, we can't give you that information because they're worried about shark fin hunters going and hunting sharks. And I said, well, how are we supposed to? We're on the horns of a dilemma then. Then they said, well, there's another part of Fish and Wildlife that can do this analysis. I'm like, well, why don't you give them the data? Like, we don't trust them. Like, excuse me, but they're literally in your department. Yeah. And again, this is actually what happened. And can you do an NDA or something? Eventually, they managed to solve the internal quandary, and indeed, the probability of us hitting a shark is essentially zero. Then there's another organization that I didn't realize existed until a few months ago that cares about whether we would potentially hit a whale in international waters. Now, again, you look at the surface of look at the Pacific and say, what percentage of the Pacific consists of whale? Like, he'll give you a big picture and like point out all the whales in this picture. I was like, I don't see any whales. It's like basically 0%. And if our rocket does hit a whale, which is extremely unlikely beyond all belief, that is the fate had it. That whale has some seriously bad luck. It's like the least lucky whale ever. I
mean, this is quite absurd.
Yeah,
the bureaucracy of this, however it emerged.
Yes, well, I mean, one of the things that's pretty wild is for launching out of Vandenberg in California, they were worried about seal procreation, whether the seals would be dismayed by the sonic booms. Now, there have been a lot of rockets launched out of Vandenberg, and the seal population has steadily increased. So if anything, rocket booms are an aphrodisiac, based on the evidence, if you would correlate rocket launches with seal population. Nonetheless, we were forced to kidnap a seal, strap it to a board, put headphones on the seal, and play sonic boom sounds to it to see if it would be distressed. This is an actual thing that happened. This is actually real. I have pictures.
I would love to see this. Yeah. There's a seal with headphones.
Yes, it's a seal with headphones strapped to a board. And now the amazing part is how calm the seal was.
Yeah.
Because if I was a seal, I'd be like, this is the end. They're definitely going to eat me.
Yeah.
How will the seal, when a seal goes back to other, its seal friends, how's he going to explain that?
They're never going to believe him.
Never going to believe him. And that's why I'm like, well, it's sort of like, it's like getting kidnapped by aliens and getting an anal probe, You come back and say, I swear to God, I got kidnapped by aliens and they stuck an anal probe in my butt. And people are like, no, they didn't. That's ridiculous. His seal buddies are never going to believe him that he gets strapped to a board and they put headphones on his ears. And then let him go. Twice, by the way. We had to do it twice.
They let him go twice.
We had to capture
the same seal.
Well, no, different seal.
Oh, okay. Did you get a seal of approval?
Yeah, exactly. A seal of approval. No, I mean this is like, I don't think the public is quite aware of the madness that goes on.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Frickin' seals with frickin'
headphones. I mean, it's a good encapsulation of the absurdity of human civilization. Seals and headphones.
Yes.
What are the pros and cons of open sourcing AI to you as another way to combat, a company running away with AGI?
In order to run, like really deep intelligence, you need a lot of compute. So it's not like, you can just fire up a PC in your basement and be running AGI, at least not yet. Grok was trained on 8,000 A100s running at peak efficiency. And Grok's going to get a lot better, by the way. We will be more than doubling our compute every couple months for the next several months.
There's a nice write-up of how it went from Grok 0 to Grok 1.
By Grok?
Yeah. Right, Grok just bragging, making shit up about itself.
Just Grok?
Yeah. It's like a weird AI dating site where it exaggerates about itself. No, there's a write-up of, like where it stands now, the history of its development, and where it stands on some benchmarks compared to the state of the art GPT 3.5, and so I mean, there's Llama. You can open source once it's trained. You can open source a model, and for fine tuning and all that kind of stuff. Like, what to you is the pros and cons of that, of open sourcing base models?
I think there's some merit to open sourcing. I think perhaps with a slight time delay, I don't know, 6 months even. I think I'm generally in favor of open sourcing, like bias was open sourcing. I mean, it is a concern to me that, OpenAI, I was, I guess arguably the prime, prime mover behind OpenAI, in the sense that it was created because of discussions that I had with Larry Page, back when he and I were friends, and I'd stay at his house and talk to him about AI safety, and Larry did not care about AI safety, or at least at the time he didn't. And at one point he called me a speciesist for being pro-human, and I'm like, well, what team are you on, Larry? You're on Team Robot, to be clear. And I'm like, okay, so at the time, Google had acquired DeepMind. They had probably 2/3 of all AI research, probably 2/3 of all the AI researchers in the world. Mm-hmm. They had basically infinite money and compute. And the guy in charge, Larry Page, did not care about safety, and even yelled at me, and called me a speciesist as being pro-human.
So I don't know if you notice about humans, they can change their mind, and maybe you and Larry Page can be friends once more.
I'd like to be friends with Larry again. He got really the breaking of the friendship was over OpenAI, and specifically, I think the key moment was recruiting Ilya Sutskever. So
I love Ilya. He's so brilliant.
Ilya's a good human, smart, good heart, and that was a tough recruiting battle. It was mostly Demis on one side and me on the other, both trying to recruit Ilya. And Ilya went back and forth. He's going to stay at Google, then he's going to leave, then he was going to stay, then he would leave. And finally, he did agree to join OpenAI. That was one of the toughest recruiting battles we've ever had. But that was really the linchpin for OpenAI being successful. And I was, also instrumental in recruiting a number of other people. And I provided all the funding in the beginning, over $40 million. And the name. The open in OpenAI is supposed to mean open source. And it was created as a nonprofit open source, and now it is a closed source for maximum profit, which I think is not good karma.
But like we talked about with war and leaders talking, I do hope that there's only a few folks working on this at the highest level. I do hope you reinvigorate friendships here.
Like I said, I'd like to be friends again with Larry. I haven't seen him in ages. And we were friends for a very long time. I met Larry Page before he got funding for Google. Or actually, I guess, before he got venture funding. I think he got the first 100K from, I think, Bechtel's-Heim or someone.
It's wild to think about all that happened. And you guys known each other that whole time. Just 20 years.
Yeah, since maybe 98 or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy how much has happened since then.
Yeah, 25 years. A lot has happened. It's insane.
But you're seeing the tension there, like maybe delayed open source.
Yeah. Like, what is the source that is open? You know what I mean? Like, there's basically, it's a giant CSV file.
Yeah.
With a bunch of numbers.
Yep.
What do you do with that giant file of numbers? How do you run? Like, the amount of actual, the lines of code is very small. Mm-hmm. And most of the work, the software work, is in the curation of the data. So it's like trying to figure out what data is separating good data from bad data. Like you can't just crawl the internet because there's a lot of junk out there. Mm-hmm. a huge percentage of websites have more noise than signal. You know, because they're just used for search engine optimization. They're literally just scam websites. So,
how do you, by the way, sorry to interrupt, separate the signal and noise on X? That's such a fascinating source of data. No offense to people posting on X, but sometimes there's a little bit of noise. So
yeah, I think the signal noise could be greatly improved. I mean, really, all of the posts on the X platform should be AI recommended, meaning like we should populate a vector space around any given post, compare that to the vector space around any user, and match the two. Mm-hmm. Right now, there is a little bit of AI used for the recommended posts, but it's mostly heuristics. And if there's a reply, where the reply to a post could be much better than the original post, but it will, according to the current rules of the system, get almost no attention compared to a primary post.
Oh, so a lot of that, I got the sense. So a lot of the X algorithm has been open source and been written up about, and it seems that there to be some machine learning. It's disparate, but there's some.
There's a little bit, but it needs to be entirely that. Like at least if you explicitly follow someone, that's one thing. But if you, in terms of what is recommended from people that you don't follow, that should all be AI.
I mean, it's a fascinating problem.
Yeah.
So there's several aspects of it that's fascinating. First, so as the write-up goes, it first picks 1,500 tweets from a pool of hundreds of millions. First of all, that's fascinating because you have hundreds of millions of posts every single day, and it has to pick 1,500 from which it then does obviously people you follow, but then there's also like some kind of clustering it has to do to figure out what kind of human are you, what kind of new clusters might be relevant to you, people like you. This kind of problem is just fascinating because it has to then rank those 1,500 with some filtering, and then recommend you just a handful. And to me, what's really fascinating is how fast it has to do that. So currently, that entire pipeline to go from several hundred million to a handful takes 220 seconds of CPU time, single CPU time.
Yeah.
And then it has to do that in like a second. So it has to be like super distributed in fascinating ways. Like there's just a lot of tweets.
There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff on the system. And I think right now it's not currently good at recommending things from accounts you don't follow.
Yeah.
Or where there's more than one degree of separation. So it's pretty good if there's at least like some commonality between someone you follow liked something, or reposted it or commented on it or something like that. But if there's no let's say somebody posts something really interesting, but you have no followers in common, you would not see it.
Interesting. And then, as you said, replies might not surface either.
Replies basically never get seen because they're currently, and I'm not saying it's correct, I'm saying it's incorrect. Replies have a couple order of magnitude less importance than primary posts.